Right now, I have the pleasure of introducing Harvey Rambarath of the Seminole Tribe of Florida. He is our Assistant Director of Planning and Development. So Harvey, go ahead, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chris. Good morning, everybody. I hope you guys are enjoying the Florida winter weather. I'm sure it's a lot better than a lot of other places. This morning, I'm going to be talking to you guys about two projects that the Seminole Tribe are in design and construction phases. These projects are the Big Cypress and Brighton solar projects. The first thing I'm going to be talking about will be about our project partners, the project overview, and then we'll be talking about materials costs, escalation and delays, lessons learned, and status and activities yet to be completed. And we'll do a similar thing for the Brighton project. Before we get to the project themselves, a little bit about the Seminole Tribe. Yesterday, Emran mentioned that there were 9 reservations. There are actually 7, but there are 2 other locations, which would be Tamiami Trail and the Naples community, which are not really reservations, but we have a lot of tribal members living in those areas, and the Public Works Department provides services in those areas. That's why he mentioned 9 areas. But these are the 7 main areas where the Seminole Tribe, reservations and trust lands for the Seminole Tribe of Florida. The Seminole Tribe of Florida is a federally recognized tribe, and it's the only Indian tribe that never signed a peace treaty. The 2 projects we'll be talking about will be in the Big Cypress and Brighton reservations, which are towards the central part of the state. The Big Cypress reservation is about 52,000 acres, and the Brighton reservation is over 35,000 acres. A little bit more about the tribe. The tribe has exercised sovereign authority over territories in the southeast U.S. From time immemorial. It resisted U.S. and political removal efforts through the 19th century. It was organized under the Indian Reorganization Act in 1957, and it has a Seminole Tribe government section and a board section that oversees the business arm of the tribe. The tribe is recognized for leadership in advancing sovereignty. It opened the first smoke shops in 1976, the first high-stakes bingo in 1979, and the first guitar-shaped hotel in 2019. And apparently some of you are staying there, so hope you're enjoying the facilities. So what led to this effort for what was the impetus for this solar project? Well, first of all, we had a dependence problem. Right now, the tribe does not produce its own energy, and we depend on FPL, Glaze Electric, LCEC, and Lakeland Electric, different electric companies and corporations to provide electricity to the various reservations. The cost for that the tribe pays for utilities for electricity is typically increasing, and even though there are alternatives and there's a lot of solar and all these types of opportunities, the price is still going up, and especially in the rural areas, we pay a lot more than we pay in the Hollywood reservation, where we get our power from FPL. And one of the things that you need to take into consideration is that as users leave the utilities, you're going to find that the cost is probably going to rise for those who are still on it. Hurricane Irma is what started this off and led us towards the sustainable development drive. It was an extremely powerful storm that occurred in 2017, and most of the tribe's reservations were affected. Now let me see if I can get this to work. I will have to switch. Okay. Yes. So this is from the weather.gov. It shows the path of Hurricane Irma in 2017. You can see it went through the entire state. So all of the tribes' reservations were affected. Hurricanes are nothing new to the state of Florida. We get them frequently. Last year we had Hurricane Ian and Nicole, which affected the state of Florida. But Hurricane Irma was an eye-opener in that all of the tribe reservations were affected. And in the Big Cypress and Brighton reservations, we lost power, and it was over 2 weeks in some places where we had to rely on generators running nonstop to provide power to these facilities. And one of the things we learned was that generators are not meant to be running nonstop for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So there were a lot of maintenance issues. And the tribe has approximately 700 home generators for each of the tribal members, for most of the tribal members' homes. And we had 5 generator techs at the time. They were running ragged, trying to repair these generators and take care of it. So that led to, let me switch back to the PowerPoint. Presentation board. Okay, I got it. All right. So, right. So the tribe had to close and discontinue government operations for several weeks, and in some cases, months until recovery. In the Big Cypress Reservation, there are approximately 680 tribal members, and there are 619 in the Brighton Reservation who were particularly impacted by the grid resiliency and outages. In the aftermath of Hurricane Irma, the tribe was the largest purchaser of propane and diesel for generators in Florida. And like I said, even commercial generators are not designed to run nonstop for weeks on end. So we looked for solutions. In January 2018, the chairman and the tribal council formed the Renewal Energy Committee with key people across the tribe, including representatives from the chairman's office. And the committee was charged with ensuring power continuity across critical tribal operations to the extent possible during and after a storm, and to identify solutions to mitigate and limit the power outages as a result of a storm, and to identify opportunities that will allow the tribe to be as self-sufficient as possible in meeting its energy demand. Well, Florida is the sunshine state and has great potential for harnessing energy from the sun, so we look to the sun. This brings us to the Big Cypress Solar Project. First of all, our project partners. Initially, the projects for the Big Cypress and Brighton Reservation was conceived by Godfrey and Khan. They assisted us in preparing the grant application, which was submitted, and we received the grants. However, we actually went out to bid for the project and realized that the sizing was off. We needed to increase the size of the battery backups in order to achieve what we were trying to accomplish. So we had to go back to DOE and reevaluate the projects and get some changes to it. Doing that, we were able to separate the Big Cypress and Brighton project and get grant funding for each of the projects. So for the Big Cypress Solar Project, we are going to be building about 445 kilowatts of solar facilities with about 1,510 kilowatts of battery energy storage systems, aka BESS, with transfer switches and control systems that will serve the four of the essential facilities in the Big Cypress Reservation. One of them being the Frank Billy Field Office, the next one the Senior Center, the Health Center, and the Public Safety Complex. And you can see the locations of where these buildings are relative to each other. This here is the system that we're installing at the Frank Billy Field Office. We are going with ground-mounted solar panels. I showed the location of the existing generator and breaker, where we plan to put the BESS, and I'm pointing to the computer instead of. I'm pointing to the computer instead of, where's the point? Ah, there it is. Right. So here's the existing generator and breaker. This here is where we're thinking about putting the best because it's close to the electrical room. And the panels are out in that particular area. These are some construction photos. You can see that the panels are up. It's been up for quite some time, but we have not yet been able to connect it to the facilities because of supply chain issues in that the motorized breakers took a long time, and it still hasn't arrived as yet. And the batteries, I'm happy to say we do have the batteries, and we are waiting for them to be delivered by the end of this month. This year, some of during the construction phase where we had dug up and run all of the conduits, etc., I'm happy to say that those holes have been filled in. These holes have been filled in, and right now we have the pads waiting for the placement of the batteries. So here's the senior center. At the senior center, we decided to go with the carport mounted system because this will also provide shades for the seniors, and the senior center is right here. And this is the Frank Billy Field office over here. Again, similar situation. And these are pictures showing during construction, the carports are up, they're being used by the seniors, but again, we aren't connected to the buildings as yet. At the senior center, yes, more pictures. All of these holes have been filled in. Pads have been poured, and we are waiting for the batteries to be delivered and the motorized breakers. At the health clinic, we put roof-mounted solar panels, but we wanted to achieve 170 kilowatt generation over there. So the roof space was not enough, so we also included some solar panels on carport mounted towards the back of the building. These are pictures. I don't know if Stan is here. Yes, he is. So Stan at City from Sandia Labs, he was out there, and he came out to visit the site. This here is a view of the carport mounted system, and you can see the inverters are there mounted, ready and waiting to be connected. And again, all of the trenches have been filled in, and the pads are ready. At the BC Public Safety Building, we decided we had to find a different location for the solar panels from what was originally planned. The closest and most feasible option we found was this area over here, which is actually a dry retention area. And it seemed like a great idea to place solar panels in the dry retention area because you can't use it for anything else. You'll still be able to get the retention that you need on the site, and you'd also be able to generate electricity to serve the building. So with that being done and being said, it was a great idea. The place was dry when we thought about it. So we installed some of the posts, and we got the majority of posts in, but there were 15 posts that refused to go because under Florida there's some very hard lime rock in some places, and the posts didn't go. They bent, so there are 15 pole refusals. So we had to come up with another solution with regards to how to deal with the situation. And while we were thinking about it, it started to rain. And since then, the area has been wet. We're hoping it's going to be dried off since we're in the dry season, and we'll be able to finish the installation of these posts. Now, the solution we came up for those 15 posts was, instead of drilling into the hole and breaking up the concrete, damaging everything over there, is we are going to be using a ballast system. We are proposing to use a ballast system, which is like about 11 feet by 3 feet wide. And we put a post in there, so the weight is going to keep it down, and we're not going to have to drill into the ground anymore. So that's the plan for those 15 remaining posts, and this is the only area where we don't have the solar panels up as yet, but installing the solar panels is relatively quick once we get the post in. Again, the pads have been poured, these things have been filled in, and we have a solution. During the course of the project, you guys have probably experienced supply chain issues and delays in getting materials and delivery of items. So this project started in the midst of supply chain disruptions, and materials prices have increased dramatically. The delivery times increased significantly, and as a result, we needed to create a change order for time and money. The original contract was for $2.9 million. The change order was almost $600,000. So the new contract amount was $3.5 million. The original contract time was 184 days, and the net change in time was 165 days. New contract time 349. We expect to have the project completed. I was really hoping it'd be completed in time for this presentation, but the motorized breakers still have not arrived. They are supposed to be getting here at the end of February or early March, and that's the last missing piece in order for us to do the connections. Right now, we are in coordination with the various departments that occupy the buildings which are going to be affected, because one of the things that we need to do is we're going to have to interrupt the power at these facilities. We are going to have to disconnect the existing generators at these facilities. And in the Big Cypress Reservation, the power is, we have frequent interruptions, and public safety, health clinic, and the government office, these are places where you really don't want to be without power. So what we are having to do is to coordinate temporary backup generators and to find the optimum time to do these switchovers. We are planning to make these switchovers over on weekends where there'd be less staff in the building. But even still, we are going to have to provide power to maintain refrigeration when needed, to maintain air conditioning where needed, and allow for the connections and disconnection and changeover, so that when everything is said and done, the facility will be able to run in such a way that when there is an interruption, the battery will kick in first, and the battery will be able to run the facility for at least 3 hours. In the case of an extended interruption, after the 3 hours have expired and the battery has depleted to, let's say, 20% or whatever is the optimum amount for the batteries, the generators are going to kick in. And when the generators kick in, let me go back to, when the generators kick in, the generators are going to run the facility, and the generators are also going to recharge the batteries. This is probably going to take a couple hours, maybe 2 or 3 hours. After the batteries have been recharged up to a certain level, what's going to happen is the generator is going to cut off, and the battery is going to run the facility for another 3 hours. So that way you're going to be saving on wear and tear on your generators, and you would also be allowing for maintenance of the generators in the case of an extended outage. This is very important because one of the questions that was asked is, why didn't you make the battery system big enough to run the facility for, let's say, 24 hours or 3 days for that matter? Well, you could. It will just increase the cost of the project tremendously. And does it make sense? Because you want these batteries to be recycling, the power to be recycling. You don't want them to just be sitting there charged up and not being used. So for each facility, you're going to have to do like a power energy needs analysis and come up with an optimum solution. Baker Tilly was the consultant that assisted us with this, and we decided that the 3-hour duration would probably be the best way to go, in that it would allow for the batteries to recycle. We'd be able to use the batteries to do peak power shaving, to reduce the energy needs of these facilities by at least 30%. And well, we're going to be saving the tribe money, and we're going to be building resiliency, because when in the instance of interruptions, the majority of interruptions last less than an hour. So the batteries are going to run the facility. Nobody's even going to know that the power is out. And the generators are not going to be suffering from short startup times and run times, which causes the most wear and tear on engines. So that's the idea behind all of the designs for our 4 facilities. And now, unforeseen circumstances. Yeah, during the construction, we hit an unmarked sanitary sewer line. You think you think it. We marked all of it, but this one was not marked. We hit it. We fixed it, but that's one of the things that you have to worry about. Another thing that happened was at the medical clinic, the roof membrane was damaged during the construction and laying of the solar panels on the roof. Now, those panels on the roof, we do not use any penetrations. They use a ballast system to weigh down the panels on the roof, so there were not supposed to be any penetrations. However, accidents happen, and we did have a cut, and we found out about it after there were some heavy rains. So those are some of the things that you have to be careful about with regards to installation. So here are some of the lessons learned. The first one is to double check the PV and BESS storage needs to provide the desired resilience. I talked about that again. You don't have to build a battery backup large enough to run the facility for 3 or 4 days. You just need to find the optimum amount so that you are able to recycle the power in the batteries to achieve your peak power shaving and to provide protection for your generators, as well as to save money for the tribe. And that was the second one, balancing the size of the BESS. Getting design build contract award through legal and procurement was very time consuming. Expect delays due to unforeseen circumstances and be flexible, like the supply chain issues. Nobody expected COVID. Cost and time increases, and most important, you always try and keep DOE informed. So, underground locates, they're never 100% accurate. Dry retention areas are a great idea and can be used for installation of solar panels, but you need to try to time the work before the rainy season and have an alternative plan in case of pile refusals.
Make sure your condo has no.
Yeah. So roofs can be damaged during installation. Torque testings of connection is very important, especially for these carport mounted panels. Make sure those nuts are tightened properly, especially when we have to protect for 170 mile per hour winds here in South Florida. Start working on interconnection agreements very early. We started very early with regards to our interconnection agreements. We have them executed, approved through our legal department, and they're waiting to be signed off. Everybody has approved it, but it hasn't been fully executed because it cannot be executed until the systems are connected to the grid, and then Glades Electric says it's been commissioned, everything's fine. And Andy, that's when we're going to get a fully executed interconnection agreement, but it's been reviewed by Glades and by the tribe, and everything's ready to go. Hopefully all of this is going to take place in April, and then we'll be operating fully operational. And expect resistance to service interruptions from their respective departments. Nobody wants their offices to be interrupted, even though at the end of the day, you're going to be improving the circumstances for them. You're going to have to, we got to break some eggs to make an omelet. So there is going to be, there is going to be some interruptions. And we have to find the best way to minimize that time. Activities yet to be completed, well, that's the completion of construction, battery delivery, end of this month. The batteries are right now in North Carolina. The motorized breaker delivery, this year is the longest lead item. And then the interconnection, that's going to be happening over weekends. And then followed with commissioning, and they executed interconnect agreements. Then afterwards, we'd have project acceptance and closeout, and we're going to have to provide the first year of reporting, of production reporting to DOE. And that brings us to the Brighton 4 solar project. Pretty much the same partners again. And here, we're going at the Brighton Health Clinic, the administration building, the public safety building, and the veterans building. And you can see the arrows that shows you where they're located. In this case, we are looking to generate about 475 kilowatts of energy and 1,810 kilowatts of battery backup. And the same operations that we intend to have the battery be able to run the facilities for at least 3 hours before the generator has to kick in, and so on. In the RFP for getting the design build contractor, these are the locations and the information that we provided. You may notice that we had alternatives for the roof, where you can, if it was more cost effective to do it on the roof as opposed to doing it in a carport mounted systems, which is what we are proposing, we would take a look at that and see if it made sense. Well, after the experience with the BC Medical Clinic and the leak in the roof, we decided to go with the carport mounted option, even though it's a little more expensive. Because if you look at it, this is the administration building, and as you walk across this parking lot, there's the veterans building. So the idea is to build these carport mounted solar panels, which is going to provide shade for the vehicles. And when you're walking from the administration building to the veterans building on a hot summer's day, I think everybody's going to appreciate the shade, because it gets pretty hot in Florida in the central area. As you can see, the green line here is meant closer to the public safety building, so we'd use that one to serve the public safety building, and the blue section will go to serve the administration building. At the veterans building, this is the last row of parking that we're looking to cover, and that should generate enough energy to run this facility. Again, we have to coordinate the meter location with the battery location, and we looked at options where we could place it outside, ground mounted, but again, with the experience that we had in the dry retention area, we thought it might be best to go and complete the parking lot and just cover the entire, those 3 main rows of parking, cover that to provide a good walkway in between the buildings and facilities and generate energy to power these facilities. The energy generated by these PV would account for about 30% of the energy needs of these facilities. And here's the health clinic. At the health clinic, this one's a little bit distant away, and here we're going to go with ground-mounted panels in this particular area and connect to the existing health clinic. We were planning to put the panels in this area, but then we found out that this area is a route where they back up to go and provide fuel to the generators. So we had to move the location of the panels. With regards to this particular project, the contract has been awarded. We had to sign those SF-424 forms. I got it signed by the chairman, and it was returned to the DOE. Right now, we are waiting DOE to give us the clearance to issue the notice to proceed to the contractor. And as soon as we get that clearance, we'd be able to start issue the notice to proceed and start working on the design and build of this project. And to end, why should we be going solar? Well, according to Google, every second our sun produces enough energy to sustain Earth's energy needs for 500,000 years. And how do we harness this power? We solarize it. And it also said that 100 square miles of solar panels would be enough to provide for to supply the entire energy needs of the United States. And I always like to end with a statement from Chief Seattle. We do not inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Harvey. Thank you so much. At this time, I'd like to field any questions or concerns for Harvey. Okay. We'll start up front first. Sherry.
Thank you, Harvey. That was a great presentation. Do you have any utility scale solar planned?
Not as yet. The tribe has or is conducting a tribal utility authority study. We are waiting the report from Baker Tilly, and there's recommendations for. Well, we have to get a final recommendation, but the idea is to consider different options for the different reservations.
Could you touch on what you do with the avoided cost, where that 30%, when the 70% is still being spent on the energy for the buildings, but that 30%, where does it go in your tribes? Many use it for different purposes. What do the Seminole use it for?
I guess it's going to go back to the general fund because it's going to be more cost avoidance for operational expenses. Because the way it's going to work is the solar panels are going to generate about 30% of the energy needs of the building. And between that and the batteries doing the peak power shaving, we're going to probably reduce the amount of power that's consumed by these facilities by about 30 to 40%. And that's going to be cost avoidance. Instead of having to pay, let's say, $1,000 a month, I'm sure it's more than that, for each of these facilities, you'd have to pay $700 or $600 a month. So it's going to decrease the operational cost for these facilities. And what the finance department does with that, I don't know.
Harvey, wonderful presentation. Is Bill back here?
Hi, Bill.
Wonderful presentation and just fantastic project. You mentioned several times about the dry retention area and the problems you had with that. Did you ever consider floating photovoltaic panels for that so that they could rise and fall as the water level went?
Again, this is supposed to be a dry retention area. It's not supposed to be wet all of the time. So if we had a lake or a pond or something like that, yeah, that's something to consider, because I know close to the Miami International Airport, there is a project where they did just that, float solar panels on the lake to provide electricity for the facilities.
How does that affect the UK system, like inviting solar panels on top of the lake?
I really don't know. We are not floating any solar panels on top of the lake, but it's been done. If you look at the Miami International Airport on Google and you look down, you'd see that pretty close to the airport there's a lake where they have covered it with solar panels, and I think what it did is some sort of a foam, very very durable, resistant foam membrane, which perhaps Bill could talk more about, that they mounted the solar panels on. And the idea is that it can go up and down to the lake and still provide power to the facilities.
Harvey, I had a question about funding. Is it the DOE that sort of funded parts of it? Did you get anything from your local utility? Did FPL give you any kind of rebate or?
No. These projects are actually not in FPL territory. They are actually in the in Glades County Electric jurisdiction. And with regards to that, I don't know if there are other opportunities to reduce the tribe's cost share. Hearing about these tax credits and other options is something that I am going to explore with my finance department to see if this is something that could be beneficial to the tribe. But right now there are no cost share from Glades Electric. We're just happy that they're letting us do the interconnection agreement so that we can make our buildings more resilient.
Hi, I'm just wondering about the software that you use to balance things between the generators and the panels and the battery system. And have you already run that software and tried it out, or?
No, it's not installed as yet. That's going to happen after the panels and the breakers gets installed. And believe me, we all waiting to see how that works. And it's going to be constantly monitored because that's one of the things that's included in the contract. But yeah, the idea is to be able to cycle the power in the batteries for optimal performance of the batteries. Because if you have a battery that's fully charged and you leave it alone, that's not the optimal use for it. You want it to be not fully 100% charged, because that's one of the things that they suggest that you don't do. And you don't want the batteries to be fully depleted. So you pick a percentage and based upon the performance of the batteries, you may have to wait for it to get charged up to, let's say, 90% and discharged down to, say, 20%. And that's the cycle, the area that you want your batteries to be operating on. And you want the batteries to be charging and discharging and power shaving the energy needs for the facilities so that you're using the batteries for the energy needs of the facilities in the optimum way. And that's something that the software is going to have to do. I don't know how it's going to do it as yet, but that's what I told them, the one that they have to make it do for me.
Okay. We have a very similar project planned to what you're doing, so it's of great interest to me. I'm also wondering about the carports. Are you putting EV charging stations in the carports at all?
Not in the carports, but we have plans to add EV stations. In all of our new facilities that the tribe is building, we are running the conduits and so on, getting prepared for an EV future.
Any other questions?
Okay. One right up.
One up front.
I was wondering, for your interconnection agreement, did they put any type of guarantee that once you guys connected, that your members weren't going to have an increase so that they could maintain their profit?
No, the interconnection agreement did not touch on that. The interconnection agreement was strictly with regards to being able to interconnect and backfeed the grid through net metering. So it did not touch about or guarantee any rates with regards to other customers. And these are only the 4 main facilities, essential facilities at the Big Cypress Reservation and the Brighton Reservation. So that is a good point and something we need to think about. There are no guarantees, but remember, we're also looking at the possibility of tribal utility authorities. So, yeah.
Curious if the provider of the battery gave you an estimate of what the lifespan of those batteries are, and if there's a projected degradation that takes place over time. I know you'd mentioned you're planning for about 3 hours of use on the battery. Does that diminish over time? Is there an expected where they're going to have to be replaced?
Yeah, well, all batteries deplete over time, and these are guaranteed for 10 years. So I think that's about the best that we can get at this time.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. Thank you so much, Harvey.
Thank you all.
Let's give it up for Harvey one more time.